Hi listeners, Jason here. We are excited to finally announce registrations for the biggest psych health and safety community event ever. The inaugural The Psych Health and Safety Conference will be held at the Sofitel Wentworth, Sydney, June 19 to 20, 2024 and offer concurrent virtual attendance. It'll feature live podcast recordings with OG researchers including Christina Maslach and Michael Leiter of Burnout fame, Psych Health and Safety USA podcast host I. David Daniels, Australian super experts including the likes of David Burrows, a special 10-year anniversary integrated approaches to workplace mental health panel with authors Tony LaMontagne, Angela Martin and Kat Page, hand-picked case studies from organisations doing it well, and a very special interview with plaintiff Zaggy Kozarov by Catherine Dunlop on that High Court case which we previously covered on the podcast. This event will sell out. Get in quick to secure tickets at early bird prices for the 2-day conference, pre-conference masterclasses, and the VIP dinner. The first 200 in-person registrations also get a copy of her latest book, The Burnout Challenge, signed by Christina Maslach herself. Find out more and register at www.psychhealthandsafetyconference.com. Now, on to this episode.
From Flourish DX, this is the Psych Health and Safety Podcast. With workplace mental health becoming a safety prerogative, this is the source of information on psychological injury prevention and health promotion.
Hi, and welcome to the Psych Health and Safety Podcast. My name is Jason Van Schie, and I'm one of the hosts of the show. The aim of the podcast is to rapidly increase the knowledge and application of psychological health and safety in workplaces worldwide. To help with this, we have regular guests from around the world who are leading the way in this important area. But before I introduce our guest and topic for today, allow me to introduce my co-host, Joelle Mitchell. How are you today, Joelle?
Well, you know, I'm happy that it's finally Psych Week and we've had all of the team in the office at the same time for the first time ever. But I'm also very tired and I slept very badly last night, so I didn't quite have the day that I was hoping to have. But fingers crossed that will be remedied by tomorrow.
Yeah, interestingly, you and Heather are both more on the introvert scale. So I think by the end of the day, I could see you were quite depleted, having all of that people time for the whole day, living in each other's pockets. So yes, I can understand why you might need to rest and recharge tonight.
Yeah, and we did have a fairly lengthy sort of strategy session in the afternoon as well. So it was good though. Yeah, good to actually have everybody there in person and not just in two dimensions on the screen.
Yeah, Dan said to me, "Oh, they look so different." I'm like, "Yeah, there's an extra dimension, like
depth."
Whereas immediately when I saw Heather, I was like, "Hey, lifelong friend." It was the first time I'd actually met Heather, even though she's been working with us for about 6 months, and I've known her for probably 2-3 years or something like that. So it was interesting seeing Heather in person. But I was just, I guess I'm used to it, like because I go to conferences all the time and I see people I've only ever seen on LinkedIn or online. Yeah, it was a bit of a novelty though, I think, for Dan.
Yes, bless him.
Bless him. So we're recording this episode prior to Christmas, but it's going to come out after Christmas.
Correct.
So just to
this is our final recording for 2023.
So Joelle and I are quite excited.
No meteor has struck yet, Jason.
That was my prediction. Or it was a possibility. Yeah, it was low on the likelihood scale.
Well, that was my argument, but you were like, you were pretty pro meteor, to be honest.
I don't know if I was pro meteor. I was just
you were pushing the meteor agenda.
Anything could happen, right? You just don't know.
Sure. Anyway,
look,
no disaster just yet.
Not yet. Yeah, we're pleased to report it's pre-Christmas and no meteor has hit, but
we're still
you may never be hearing this episode because it might air after the meteor has hit. We don't know. Okay, anywho, our guest has been patiently waiting after getting up really, really early this morning for us because she's on the other side of the world, so I better introduce her in.
Yes.
Okay. So she conducts research and publishes on employee selection and wellbeing, positive and healthy work cultures, leadership, and dark personalities in the workplace. Sounds like a biography of yours, Joelle. She's a professor of organizational...
The whole thing or just the last bit?
The dark personalities.
Thanks, Jason.
She is a professor of organizational behavior at the Université du Québec in Canada. Welcome to the podcast, Cynthia Mathieu.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Really glad to have you on. Again, I know it's quite early in the morning your time. It's horrible to connect with East Coast in Canada. So thank you for accommodating us and our weird time zone here in Australia.
No problem. I'm a morning person. I get up very early. I like to start the day early, but then I go to bed pretty early too. So I guess I lead a boring life.
Perfect for academia. Like, you're just born for it. Yeah.
Exactly.
Wow, Jason, you just like alienated a whole portion of our audience. Nice work.
I think they'd concur.
All right. So, Cynthia, can you tell us what podcasts do you like to listen to?
I'd say anything positive. Probably Simon Sinek. I really like everything he does. I work on dark personalities, so whenever I'm not working on these topics, I kind of need the bright side of things. So, his is a bit of optimism. So it just really makes me feel positive about the world after spending the day working on these individuals who don't make the world so nice, I'd say.
Yeah,
Yes.
I can empathize with that. There's certainly been periods in my life where I've intentionally gone for the funny or warm type of entertainment because everything else was a bit too bleak. So, yes.
You don't need it
balanced
anymore,
strategy.
though, do you, Joelle? Now you've got an optimist sitting
Now I've
opposite
got-
you at work.
The most optimistic person in the world that I'm exposed to every day.
And it makes it angry.
Yeah, so now I seek out those gritty reboots just to. All right, so Cynthia, tell us about your professional career and how did you sort of end up in this area of research?
Yeah, I was doing my PhD and postdoc mostly on dark personalities and major mental disorders and personality disorders, major mental disorders, and violence. And at the same time, I was a clinical psychologist at the time. That was before I became a professor. And I started seeing these employees because I was mostly dealing with, workplace burnout and stress and anxiety. So when these employees started telling me their stories of what was going on in their workplaces, I kind of could see a profile of certain individuals who committed bullying and harassment. And then it was kind of just bookcase. I could sincerely link it to the people I was studying. The people I was studying were inmates, but I saw that it was the same profile in the workplace, maybe slightly different. And then I realized, okay, so these individuals do damages, not just in society in general, and their violence is not just the visible type of violence that we usually hear about, but the invisible violence also in workplaces. And so that's how I decided that I would dedicate my career to really kind of understanding the damages that individuals with dark personalities can have on workplaces. And really, truly, I'm working for victims, and I'm working to prevent them from doing these damages and hurting employees and organizations.
Yeah, so what was your, obviously this is an area of interest for you, but what made you decide to write a book? Because I think about writing a book, and Joelle will attest to this. I think about writing it every now and again if ChatGPT will do the hard work for me. But I don't think you would have
use writing in
ChatGPT'd
inverted
this.
commas there.
Yeah, co-authored with ChatGPT. But what would make you interested in writing a book on this particular topic?
After having finishing it, I don't really know what got into me. But honestly, I'm being very honest. I realized that most of the people who read the research that I was doing were other experts in the field. So this is something that I don't like about academia is, you publish in these journals and no one ever reads anything you do. Well, some do, but they already know about the topic, right? And they do it to cite you, but I found it really not that helpful for organizations. And since that was the main goal for me to study dark personalities was to help people and help organizations, I figured maybe writing a book would be a good way for me to share everything that I've learned in the past more than 10 years working on studying these individuals and how they manage to rise the corporate ladders and how they manipulate their way within workplaces and really are at the root of what we call toxic workplaces. So basically, the goal was to kind of get the research out there. And then I decided a book is okay, but maybe writing on the topic in different medias and having my a website to when I have time to share some of the research again that I do and recommendations so that people can really have access to it freely.
Yeah, and that's I guess one of our pet peeves, right? When you get a link to an article going, "Oh, this is really good," and then you hit a paywall, and we're never going to buy 20 different journal subscriptions to get access to all the different content that we want access to, and so making it accessible and more mainstream by writing a book, particularly with a catchy title like dark personalities in the workplace. I think it's a much better way to get the message out, right? And that's one of the reasons we podcast, not just because we're lazy and can't be bothered writing and going through the whole peer review process. How horrible would that be, Joelle?
But not just that reason, but those are some of the reasons.
How do you disseminate good information, right? And researchers, I think they need to look beyond journals, right, to publishing books, podcasts, other mediums, if they really want their message to get out and research to be heard. So, has it then translated into critical success? Have you sold many books? I reckon it would be a great one to sit, in the airport as you walk through, with all the other clickbait titles that they've got there.
I have to say, this was the first, my first attempt at writing a book, I'd say. So, this one was more academic. I think the next one will be probably more mainstream. It was hard for me to go from writing articles. I guess I felt insecure, just backing everything up because that's how you have to write when you write peer-reviewed articles, and every sentence has to be backed up. So it took me a while before I decided that I was maybe that I knew enough about the topic to write a book. And I through the process, through the chapters, because I really wrote chapter 1 till the last chapter, I realized that I was getting more comfortable with finding my voice and just being able to, say things without feeling like, oh, I need an expert to back me up on this. So I'm thinking like that one was mostly, and it was published at an academic press, but I'm thinking the next one, I think, will be more mainstream. But it was my level of comfort, honestly, and I guess my self-confidence and am I good enough to be writing this book? Do I know enough about the topic? Even though I'd been, studying it for a long time, I wanted to make sure that it wasn't, there's a lot on that topic. I'd say there's a lot coming out because it's kind of a hot topic. But I find that some of what's coming out can be detrimental in the sense that if you don't study these personalities enough, if you don't know the type of damages that psychopaths can do in workplaces, for example, you can you can read things like successful psychopaths, or how to hire a psychopath and have them kind of help you get, be more profitable. But then you read about these things, and I find it a little scary, because a lot of authors kind of make up their expertise on the subject, and I think it can be dangerous when you're dealing or talking about these types of personalities and these individuals in workplaces. So that's how it took me a while before I decided to write it, but it has put me in contact with amazing people. So I'm really glad I did. So if you're thinking about writing, I would encourage you to do it.
Really? That was not what I thought you were going to just say.
Although no, I mean, it's the end result was good, but I have to tell you, it was maybe 10 times the work that I thought it would be.
Yeah, I'm already thinking about the work, and if it's 10 times that, no, I'm not signing up for that. But yeah, I can understand the challenge, right, going from writing for an academic journal to writing a book. Yeah, but, follow the Adam Grant formula, I reckon. Write for the masses, build up a huge following, and then charge, a couple of $100,000 an hour for speaking engagements.
Never been my goal. So I think the book was kind of a way to send some messages out there, information out there. But really, a lot of what I say in the book, people will have for free on my website. I post on LinkedIn a lot. So it's basically, I like to write short, just short articles that really kind of recapture a lot of what I say in the book. And then what I like about social media is you get responses from experts, from victims, from people, and that conversation, I feel, is really what we need to have if we want change in workplaces. It's not about the academic stuff or the research, but it's about having people rethink workplaces, health and safety, and how to make workplaces safer and more positive.
Well, you're on the right podcast, so I'm glad we're going to be exploring this with you. I really want to get into it now.
Yeah, good.
All right. So, Cynthia, we've used this term dark personalities, and you mentioned psychopaths. Can you tell us a bit more about what dark personalities are?
Yes. At first, it's a researcher in Canada. He's based at UBC, and he at Del Polis. He talked about the dark triad. So what he wanted to do was take personalities that he considered to have negative impacts on others. So he termed them the dark triad. So that was composed of Machiavellianism, narcissism, and psychopathy. But now, about, I think it was 7 years ago, he renamed it the dark tetrad, and he added sadism to the three, I'd say, dark personalities. Essentially, a lot of people think that they're synonymous, that they're the same, or that they're on a continuum. So they are each on a continuum, of course, but they are all different. And all the research done on these dark personalities will prove it. So all of the common, I'd say, denominator in each of those personalities is really being manipulative and lacking empathy towards others. So that's the main, I'd say, that's the core element that really connects them all. But then you'll have differences in that Machiavellians are less impulsive than narcissists and psychopaths. They're very manipulative, but their manipulation can last for a long time. They're very patient in their lies and manipulations, where narcissists are more of the kind of look at me personality, and it's been related to what people say, the God complex. So they are impulsive and they can be aggressive as well, low empathy. And then you have psychopathy, the most dangerous of the three personalities. And research has found that at the CEO level, you'd find 3.9 to 4% of the CEOs that were studied that would clinically score as psychopathic. So that's kind of a scary, scary thought, scary stat to look at. And the difference between psychopaths and the other personalities is really there are differences there are a lot of emotions that they do not experience. They have a hard time understanding them. Sometimes they can at a cognitive level, but they don't feel emotions such as guilt, empathy. So those are, there are some human emotions that, and brain scans have shown that they don't experience emotions like other people would. So that's one, I'd say, difference with the other two personalities. But all in all three will create or wreak havoc in organizations for sure.
Yeah, and I'm sure that lots of listeners, just listening to you describe those different personality or aspects of personality, can probably pick people that they've worked with that have maybe displayed some of those characteristics. So I guess important really to note as well that personality is sort of along a continuum. So, you mentioned there that sort of percentage of CEOs who are at clinical level of psychopathy. But if we were to look at, I guess, the presence of moderate to strong traits that are, I guess, below what we would need for a clinical diagnosis, do you have any sense of kind of what the prevalence rates of that level of these types of personalities are in the workplace?
It's very hard to see, because to get the prevalence rate, you need a score. You need people to be above
nobody wants to take that test, right?
Yeah. And
excuse me, you're on the leadership track. Can you take this test, please?
There's this clinical measure for psychopathy. There's a clinical measure for narcissism, but it doesn't exist for Machiavellianism. So it's kind of more of a continuum. There are measures of Machiavellianism, but you don't have kind of a cutoff score where you say, okay, now we consider you as having that personality disorder. And so essentially, we know that in the population in general, about 6% would score clinically as narcissistic. But because a lot of the workplaces are actually looking for traits, even leadership traits that can be confounded with dark personality traits, I would say that a lot of the individuals who are doing pretty well and rising up corporate ladders pretty fast probably have a lot of the traits. And again, you don't need to have all the traits or be at a clinical level to have a damaging impact on others around you, right? Just lack of empathy and being ready to lie and manipulate others, or sell other people's ideas as your own, that in itself can be pretty damaging. Yeah
definitely. And I guess probably the one of the really terrible things is that people who maybe have those types of personality profiles are probably also more likely to be able to navigate the complexities of succeeding in very large organizations as well. So then if you talk about sort of the potential impact or damage that a person in a very senior role in an organization like that can have in terms of like the population of people who are actually within that organization, or people who might be impacted by decisions that organization makes, it's significant.
It's huge. And I mean, they're at the root of, bullying in the workplace, sexual harassment, incivility, corporate fraud. The problem is we're trying to deal with creating positive cultures. We're trying to work on reducing harassment or bullying in the workplace, but we rarely look at the source, right? And I know that's what you guys do with this in this podcast, is looking at the source to really look at how change can be implemented. But if you look at the source of toxic workplaces, you'll find toxic individuals, right? So a workplace culture is created by individuals. But it's having the courage to actually deal with these people that is lacking in many organizations. One, because they're scary, and second, because a lot of managers are not well equipped. Even HR professionals, they're not well equipped to deal with manipulation at that level. Because as you were saying, Joelle, they have web, they kind of create a web around them, and they have people rooting for them. They have people in power that who will protect them once the mask falls, and someone starts noticing the bad behaviors that they have. So honestly, it's not an easy task, but and I would say that the easiest way would be not to hire them at all. So to have recruiting processes that are really good and structured, so that you're looking for things like empathy, you're looking for things like humility, integrity. Those are all traits that are very low for these individuals. And if you're looking for more the kind of interpersonal human aspects or traits, they will score pretty low on that. But as you know, those are not the traits that organizations are mainly looking for. They're still very profit driven, so they're pretty much opening their doors to dark personalities.
Maybe Clive Lloyd was onto something, Joelle. Didn't he say don't hire sociopaths for
He did.
leaders? Yeah.
Yes, he did.
He said that would solve a lot of problems in relation to psychosocial risk. Yeah. But like you said, Cynthia, like you didn't have to cite heaps of authors in your book because a lot of it came from your own knowledge and your own research. So tell us a bit about your methodology that you've used in your own research on dark personalities.
Yes, I've studied them, mostly empirical studies. So I've studied them in different types of organizations: law enforcement, public, private, non-for-profit organizations. And I've seen them being present in most types of organizations at every level. And I've looked at the impact that they have as co-workers, but also I looked at the impact they had as leaders, which is, Joelle, what you were mentioning. If they are in a leadership role in a large organization, for example, imagine the damages that they can have because of their influence. And they've been linked to, again, harassment, abusive leadership styles, and they're very low on the good leadership, like transformational leadership, very low. And interestingly enough, they are very high in what we call laissez-faire leadership. So just basically absent leaders. So it's not just that they're abusive, it's also that they're completely absent when their employees need support. So both, I'd say a combination of both, never supporting your employees or just completely being absent, which they excuse by saying, "Oh no, I trust my employees. They're, I let my team is very effective. So I don't need to be there." But again, if problems arise, then they blame the team, and of course, they're not there to support and help them. So I've found that also they are at the root of incivility, which in one of my studies, we found that incivility had a stronger impact on mental health or on employee mental health than workplace harassment. And we found that was kind of interesting because it became ingrained in the organizational culture, and these individuals will act in an uncivil way. And so it's not enough to say that it's harassment, but it's very close, and it makes the workplace very toxic. It's a lack of respect, but it's constant.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. No, I can totally understand that. And I can understand how, some of those dark personalities might understand how they might get away with it as well. And it's like gaslighting, right? Like
Exactly.
just they know the damage that they're doing.
They know, they don't care. They're looking at protecting themselves, rising through the organization. They're looking for control. They're looking for power. And as leaders, they like to be feared. So that's something I just found out in one of my latest research. And that I have to say, it, but when the data tells you that that's how they view success through being feared, it's a scary. sometimes my data scare me. I have to say I've been working, but that result that we found a couple of months ago really did scare me. So the way that they view success and the way that they act. So for them, making people afraid is part of what a successful leader should do. And so imagine what comes with that and what the behaviors are.
Do you need more psych health and safety in your life? Then head over to the FlourishDX Academy for several free on-demand e-learning courses. If you're an internal professional, follow FlourishDX on Eventbrite to register for any of our free fortnightly interactive webinars. Our flagship professional practice program is also exclusively available for internal professionals. The 12-week course blends theory, applied practice, and interaction with other professionals through live lectures and a monthly community of practice session. Find out more about all these learning opportunities or inquire about a bespoke in-house training at the FlourishDX Academy. www.45003.org. Now back to this episode.
Yeah, that's a big distinction, right, between like fear as just a byproduct that is irrelevant to them versus fear as almost the sort of one of the things that motivates them or rewards them. That is a big difference. Yeah. So can you tell us, I guess, what are your main findings or the things that are most interesting to you at the moment in terms of what your research is telling you? That fear one is a big one.
Yeah, I've switched from looking at the impacts that they have on the workplace. So of course, what we found in their teams or employees was increased psychological distress and burnout, decrease in job satisfaction. They have a very negative impact on work-life balance because, of course, making individuals fear them or having their employees working for them and abusing employees, that has a negative impact on the employees' mental health, but also on their work-life balance, because they're probably asking their employees to work overtime or have something done by the next morning. So employees have to work all night. And so because there's no consideration, it does have an impact on employees' personal lives as well. So it just spills to, the personal lives, which I think is so sad and important to look at. So it's not just the workplace impact. And of course, employee retention is very low with these individuals. And I often say to organizations, when you do have metrics, look, at least once a year, every 6 months, look at the turnover rate in not just the entire organization, but different divisions, right? Or different teams. If there's a high turnover rate in one team, either they leave the organization or they leave the team for another one within in large organizations. There might be a problem there. There might be an individual that's making the workplace toxic. So I've been looking at their leadership style, their behaviors, their kind of the patterns that they have. I've been also looking at how they present themselves in a selection process. So how do they score on the regular kind of personality tests that are out there? And it's been interesting. They're able to fake some of the I'd say emotions, but they are unable to fake. Speaking about psychopaths in particular, they're having a hard time faking empathy, or teamwork, or interest in others, or being able to support others. They don't seem to be trying to look good on these criteria, on these traits, which I find will be helpful. So I'm digging into that now, kind of to help organizations see what do they need to be looking for to reduce the risks of hiring them. And then this summer I worked in Italy with an expert, and we were looking at emotions, and we were looking at success and manipulation and how they view success. So that's the result on kind of how they view success. And one of the things, we haven't published it yet, but one of the things, so you're the first ones to know, we haven't even spoken to anyone about it, but one of the things is not just that they want control and sex and power and be feared. So that's, of course, that's kind of, except for the rock and roll, everything was was there. And then the other aspect that was really interesting is what they view as unsuccessful. And that was all kind of the family, having a family, having positive relationships with others, with coworkers, with people in your life, having a positive, intimate relationship with a partner. So those were all things that they viewed as unsuccessful. So it wasn't just that, and that was different from the majority of the sample. It was very specific to them. It was very specific to people who scored high on psychopathy, which I found was very interesting, because of course the way we view success has an impact on our actions. And so if they see that as unsuccessful, and they see being feared and power and control and money as success, then we can kind of predict the the behaviors, and we can understand why they do what they do.
Yeah, that's a very interesting finding. And I guess you've sort of touched on this a little bit, but in terms of the impacts of those personality traits in a workforce, what does that look like, or what can that look like?
You mean the impacts on the organization?
On colleagues, or other people in the organization, or organizational outcomes for that matter.
Right. Because of the lying and manipulation, if we mostly look at narcissists and psychopaths, a lot of the kind of the flirting and the damages are mostly interpersonal. Although they are also, as I was saying, associated with corporate fraud. So there are a lot of costs in terms for the organization. A lot of times what I see is the individual with a dark personality staying in the organization for a while because, they're being protected. And you see employees having to leave either, on sick leave or if they can leave the organization. So there is a cost to colleagues. There is a cost to the organization because they're losing their best talents. Because of these types of individuals. There's a lot, they like to create conflict. They're very comfortable in chaos, and they like to create conflict among coworkers so that they will have more power over them. So that also is very detrimental to the culture, to the workplace. They make workplaces very unsafe. They will want to learn a lot of personal information, and they will get close to people to then use it and manipulate them. And it has caused a lot of people their careers. And as we know, unfortunately, a lot of times victims will go to HR, go to their manager, and many times they won't be protected at all. This will be unfortunately viewed as a conflict between two coworkers instead of being seen as bullying or harassment. So it'll be managed very differently, and a lot of the responsibility will fall onto the victim's shoulders, which shouldn't be. I try to teach my students to try to understand and know the difference and deal differently between, the difference between a conflict and harassment. But that's definitely something. And another thing that I've been seeing that's not in research but in practice was in organizations, the individual with a dark personality lodging a formal harassment complaint against their victim before the victim gets to lodge the complaint. So they kind of have a sense of what's coming, and they are very plugged into they what's going on in the workplace. So they have people telling them what's going on in the workplace, and they tend to sense something's coming and they act before. So imagine HR or the manager or even someone from the outside of the organization coming in, trying to assess what's going on with that complaint, and having a master manipulator kind of destroy someone else, position themselves as victims and destroying, and they're very credible when they lie. And that's one of the things that helps them and really hinders any type of assessment that you want to do when they're involved.
Yeah, that's a little bit scary. So we've talked a bit about what can the organisation do, and it's a lot about being careful about who you hire and who you promote, and assessing for these sorts of risk factors, if you like. What about the poor colleagues or team members who have a leader like this that has these dark personalities? What can they do to protect themselves?
Yeah, if it's your manager, that's a very tricky situation. And I always tell people you have to evaluate: do you have the energy? Do you have the bandwidth to deal with that situation? It can get pretty nasty just because they don't play with the same. I mean, with the same rules. They won't hesitate to destroy your reputation, to lie. And so you have to be pretty strong and in a good place to want to take them on. And I'm not discouraging anyone. I'm just saying that it is true. As an employee, if you do not have support from management, if you don't have support from HR, I would recommend probably trying to find something elsewhere or being transferred to another team. And I know a lot of people have been saying, yes, but then you don't deal with the problem. It's true, but there's no dealing with the problem if these individuals are protected. You will just end up getting hurt physically, mentally. It'll be very difficult. So if you do have support from HR, if you do have support from management, then you can move on, but not alone. You have to be coached. I would say probably someone from the outside, a coach, a mentor, it could be a psychologist, someone who's really helping you. But it's a huge undertaking. It's a huge undertaking. So I would say report, talk. But if you see that there's no support, then I wouldn't recommend to act on it. Informing the organization, though, is something that's really important. And I've been telling organizations that they absolutely need to have exit interviews. So why are people leaving? That's how you can create a healthier culture, and by knowing what's wrong with the culture as it is now. You can try to change things for other employees. Unfortunately, oftentimes it's too late for the employee who's leaving the organization. But then you can get a lot of good information there. So I would say it's not an easy task, but even for HR and organizations and management to have the courage to take it on is something very very difficult. So I will tell people, write everything down. No oral communication whatsoever, because they'll be able to lie on, no, this never happened. I never had that meeting. I was never there. So try not to meet them alone. If you do meet them, maybe have a sheet or a list of everything that's been said during the meeting and have them sign it. You sign it, and maybe have another person sign it. If they don't want to, then you can just send an email and say, following the meeting, this is what was discussed. This is what is expected. This is when we will meet with you again. So I think it's important to write everything down as much as possible, and who was there, when, where was it, what was said. But again, it takes a lot of energy. It certainly does.
Yeah, I think that's a good warning. And what you're saying there reminds me of something. I saw some advice written on LinkedIn recently where they said, dance like no one's watching, email like someone will be reading it out in court one day. So I think that's good advice.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
But yeah, it's a huge undertaking, right? And if you're already distressed, if it's already taken a negative toll on your mental health, it would, I'd say for 99% of people, they should be exiting the situation rather than trying to fight it.
Exactly. Unfortunately. But if you're flagging things, at least to some people, to HR before you leave, they should be able to eventually deal with the individual. Will they do it? It depends on, everything comes from the top. The culture is created, higher management creates the culture, but they also decide how they want to apply the different policies that they have. And that's so important. I've always said that the most well-written policies for harassment and safe workplaces are only as good as their application. A lot of organizations have policies. They say they'll protect employees. They talk and they'll give you training on harassment and whatnot. But then when something happens, are they protecting victims? If not, no one will come forward, and then they'll be able to boast, oh, we've done this training and now no one's actually lodging complaints. This is great. We're doing great. You're not looking at what's going on. You're just looking at, are people afraid to tell you that something's going on? Do they trust you? So a safe workplace is also about trusting that the organization will do what it can to protect you and to make it safe. So it takes courage. It definitely does, to deal with these individuals who are making the workplace unsafe, but it's absolutely necessary, because you can work on all the positives, and I love working on adding positive to workplaces to make it safe. But if there are individuals who are still there, who are making the workplace unsafe, no amount of training or workshops or mentoring will help make it safer, if that the individual is still there and allowed and enabled to do what they do to employees.
Yeah, lipstick and pig come to mind, and Band-Aids, bullet wounds. Yeah, that sort of thing.
Exactly. Fake caring. That's what I was talking about a few weeks ago. So kind of all the articles coming out about how leaders need to be empathic, and it'll make people feel better. But then the ultimate goal is always making them more productive. So there's something there where do you actually care about their well-being, or have you read an article where if you say the right things, then people will feel better, and then they should work a little bit more for you. So it's just the integrity of it. is so important. And you'll see that in these individuals where they'll learn the lines, right? They'll learn the lines, they'll say the right things. But one of the things that I've noticed is people can feel it. There's something off in when they say something or when they tell you, oh no, your well-being is so important to us. But then they, an hour later, they ask you to do something at night. Or, there you see that so often leaders go into training for well-being and safe workplaces. They pick up a few lines, they use them, but they change nothing in the way that they actually lead people. It's just, they have this song, but not the music, or I don't know how the words, but not they know the words, but not the music, I think is what I mean. But yeah, you can sense that it's not real.
So what would be the big sort of takeaways or lessons that you would like so for people who are reading your book or reading your webpage? What are the takeaways that you would hope them to come away with?
I guess it's learn about who these individuals are. I think we need to change what we admire about people, how we define success, to give these individuals less power. We need to redefine leadership for sure. Having someone who's charismatic, who makes grandiose promises. That's not leadership. Leadership is about caring. It's about leading people in a healthy way, in a healthy place. It's about creating safe spaces for your employees to actually be able to shine and show their talent. So just reading and understanding how they're able to manipulate and creating boundaries in selection processes and also in the workplace. Maybe having 360-degree evaluations of these individuals where they rate themselves. They're rated by their employees, colleagues, and their boss. Or just finding ways to actually know what people do during the day. Getting to know your employees, getting to know your managers if you're higher management, to really understand, are these ideas coming from this person or from someone else? So I guess the human side is very important, but having the courage to deal with the toxic elements in the workplace is crucial if you want to have safer workplaces.
So some lofty goals there.
Yes, I know.
So, Cynthia, it's been a fascinating conversation with you. It's a really great topic. So great that Joelle was able to connect with you and convince you to come on the podcast. So thanks for that. But about this point in time in the podcast, we like to ask all our guests the same question. And that is, if you were to look into the future, what would your hopes for the future of workplace mental health be?
I'd say kindness is something that we don't talk about. And it kind of looks, I don't know how to say that, but kind of pink and kind of unicorns, but just being able to be open to one another, being kinder to people around us, I think is crucial. I think it's really really important. I think we all need it, especially now. I think the world has an impact on the workplace as well. What we see, what we experience, it all has an impact on who we are in the workplace. So I would like people to ask themselves, what is the impact I want to have in my workplace? What traces do I want to leave? What's the footprint that I want to leave on my colleagues, on my coworkers, on my employees, as a leader or just as an employee? I think that's what I would want. More kindness and people seeing how we are responsible for our workplace culture and health.
lofty aspirations. I heard unicorns, rainbows.
I know. Isn't it kind of odd that I'm working on dark personalities, but underneath all that, I'm an optimist.
Yeah. You need that, right? If you're going to be working in this subject matter.
Absolutely.
So, nice aspiration.
Yeah, and thank you for the work that you guys are doing. I think it's really important. Steering conversations and having people talk about what they do, and helping others understand what workplace safety is about. I think that's so important.
Yeah, and we need to give academics a voice, right? Like, they shouldn't be behind paywalls anymore. We need to get them out there and sharing their research.
Yes,
free the academic voice. So Cynthia, last question for you, and then you can get on with your day. Do you have any words of advice that you'd like to share for listeners who are interested in working in the area of workplace mental health?
Yes, I think we have to move beyond what's there. Always try to see if there's another layer to, and so for instance, working on inclusivity. We all know now, we've had so much training on it, our workplace mental health. We know the signs, we know the symptoms. Now, what do we do to actually make it happen is something that I think needs to be done. It's not just inclusivity, it's not just getting the training, understanding what it is, but how do we put it in action? My favorite saying is actions speak louder than words. I think we need action now in our organizations, and everybody's everybody can take action. You don't need to have a certain role or but that's what I would say is you want to work on workplace well-being, or health in the workplace. Look at what can be done and the impact of what's done also. So don't just do training. Measure what happens next. Make sure that that training does have an impact and make a change. So that's something that I think is important.
Wonderful. Thank you, Cynthia.
Thank you.
Yeah. I've been saying that for a while, right? Like, if stigma reduction or awareness raising is your goal, aim higher. Like, we're past that point, right? Like, let's actually do something that has impact.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Nice one. Well, Cynthia, it's been fantastic talking to you. Again, thank you so much for getting up early on your side of the world and sharing with our listeners today.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
Terrific. Well, listeners, that brings us to the end of this episode, the last one that Joelle and I are recording for the year 2023, and one of the first you're going to be listening to on 2024 if that comet doesn't hit. Remember, we do video these with our guests, so you will be able to check out the video over YouTube and many other videos. There's like literally hundreds of hours on there. You can also find the clips from these episodes on the Flourish DX LinkedIn page. While you're over on LinkedIn, the three of us are over there too. So if you want to continue the conversation, please do reach out. But that's it for today. We'll catch you next episode.
You've been listening to the Psych Health and Safety Podcast. To stay up to date with the latest on psychological injury prevention, follow Flourish DX on LinkedIn and subscribe to the Psych Health and Safety Podcast at www.psychealthandsafety.com.